Hi, everybody. Welcome. Uh, I have the great pleasure this time to visit with a friend of mine, uh, but a very special friend. I'm just going to say a few words and then we'll just schmooze because this friend of mine I know doesn't like interviews. He doesn't like to be interviewed, but this is not an interview, so he's agreed to do it. Let me ask you something. What do Meryl Streep, Jessica Chastain, Adam Driver, and Oscar Isaac all have in common? Can you guess?
You're asking me?
No, you
Good,
know.
good.
I'm asking my friends who are watching. Okay, what they have in common is a gentleman named Moni Yakin. For over 52 years, Moni has taught movement at Juilliard. His students have included Hollywood's most celebrated actors, and he is often cited as one of their most formative influences. The new documentary, fantastic documentary about Moni, called Creating a Character, tells the story of the native Israeli who moved to Paris in the early 50s, where he took up mime. Soon he was performing around the world, and during a Parisian performance, something happened very special, and he'll tell us about it. He met a lady named Stella Adler, and the rest was history. So I'm in Los Angeles. Obviously, we're during the pandemic. It's late July of 2020, and my friend Moni is in New York in his great apartment on the Upper West Side. And I usually used to meet with him, and we would sit and chat and have a schmooze. And since we can't do it in person, Moni, thank you for joining me virtually.
It's
How are
my
you?
pleasure, Mike. My pleasure.
How are you coping, my friend?
Uh, like everybody else, frustrated, okay, trying to cope with it and flowing with the stream.
Like all of us, we have for the past 6 months been treated to a very different world, and we're going to have to acclimate ourselves because our world, the way we knew it, is not going to be the same. And so many of us in our profession are suffering greatly, both here and in Israel, especially people in our industry. And how has it affected your teaching? Obviously, since March, Juilliard, I understand, was closed, right?
It was closed, yes. And we taught online. However, it's not something that I'm too keen on doing. And I decided because there was a high level of anxiety and a lot of people felt inner tension that was unbearable. Instead of doing my regular classes on Zoom, I conducted a special meditation class that has to do with releasing of tensions and anxiety. And I felt that this served them best at that time.
So, what does the immediate future look like for the hundreds and thousands of young people who come to New York every year in search of their careers, their dreams? I know many of them are lucky enough after so many tries and auditions, they finally get a part, they get to work in a theater, and all of a sudden that hope is dashed. Everything is closed. They can't even supplement their their lifestyle by working in a restaurant like they used to, or in a bar. That's gone, and the industry is in a crisis. What does it look like? What do they what do they think is going to happen in the near future at Juilliard?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that the crisis is really unimaginable what's going on because theater is going to be dark for a long time. Even if they open it, people will not want to go and sit near each other. So this industry, the theater industry is going to suffer greatly, greatly and I don't know how it will recuperate in the next few years. I think that the film industry is suffering as well, but they intend to reopen it, and it will be a bit easier than theater. And television, I think, will do very well because the production of television is more contained, more under control. And I think a lot will be done for television. However, with the thousands of people that come to New York and want to study, whether it is at Juilliard or at Yale or at NYU or other schools, it's really, really tough. We are in a very tough world, and we don't know when the end will come, you know, the end to the pandemic. So everything is like suspended at the moment. People live in limbo, and it's not a good feeling.
And you know, one of my guests and one of my friends on my channel, on my YouTube channel, was Manny Eisenberg a few weeks ago. Great, legendary producer. Right. And Manny even said to me he believes that many theater companies, will never be able to come back.
I totally think that. Totally.
Well, let's talk a little bit about my friend Moni. For those who are not familiar, first of all, I urge everyone to see the documentary. But Moni is a nickname, and you were born Solomon, right?
I was born Shlomo.
Shlomo, yeah, Shlomo. And Shlomo became Moni is a nickname.
It was always I did not know that my name was Shlomo until I went to school. I was always called Moni from the day of my birth.
And you were born in Jerusalem. How many siblings do you have?
More than I can count now. a lot.
And you were a bit of a rebel, from what I understand, when you were a young man in Jerusalem, and got into some trouble. And then something saved you from that mamzeriut, and it was your brother, right?
Well, rebel is a very poetic name. I was a little hoodlum.
I'm being careful because, you know.
I was a street kid, basically. I didn't want to go to school. I went to elementary school, and after that I started immediately to work. And my older brother, who really took care of me, because at that time when I grew up, my father did not feel well, he was ill. So my older brother took it upon himself to educate me. And he sent me to all kinds of evening schools, and I refused to go to any of them. I just went for a week, and that was it. And one day, when I was about 14, I think, he came home. It was a wintry day. It was rainy outside. And he said, are you interested in becoming an actor? And it was the first time in my life that he heard yes from my mouth. And I didn't know why I said that and what was the impulse, but I felt that something was right there. So he gave me an address and sent me there. And that was the beginning of my long journey.
Did you ever find out why particularly he thought of suggesting you become an actor rather than anything else? Why?
He tried everything else. So acting was one of the things that he tried, and it hit the mark.
And so, you were talking about a mutual friend of ours who influenced you right from the beginning. This was in the 50s in Israel, right?
You're talking about Shaike Ophir?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You
By that time, yeah, at that time I was already an actor. I acted in the Masach Theater in Jerusalem, which was a fantastic, fantastic theater that was created by a British director that came from the Old Vic. And he was very demanding and highly artistic. And I enjoyed myself tremendously being an actor, being a successful actor at the time. As time went by, I received big parts, etc. And lo and behold, one day I went to see at Kolnoa Edison, I went to see Shaike Ophir appear, and it changed my entire artistic outlook. I just felt that this was the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
For those friends of ours or those who are watching who may not be familiar with the name Shaike Ophir, Shaike Ophir, I think we both, Moni and I agree, was probably one of the, if not the most naturally gifted and talented artists that we ever produced in Israel. You can use the word genius. And I remember in 1954, Moni, we came to Israel. I came with my parents, my sister and I. At the time, we were performing Yiddish theater in Israel. And we were performing in Tel Aviv in a theater called Mugrabi. There was the Mugrabi cinema, and in the basement was a theater. And I'll never forget, I went one day with my sister, and we watched a pantomime performance, and it was Shaike Ophir. It was Shaike, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ziva Rodan. I may be wrong, but when
No. She was in his company at the time.
I will never forget it because much later, we became friends. His wife, Lydia, was the daughter of a great Yiddish performer named Schumacher,
right?
Jigan and Schumacher, and Lydia and I became friends as children, and eventually she married Shaike. But watching Shaike, when you spoke about him in the documentary, I could identify with that because I can still see it. I was 8 years old, 1954, and I was so moved and impressed by it that I still see it in front of my eyes. Eventually, Shaike obviously became a great actor, a mime, a comedian, a writer. He created Gashash Chiver, basically the most popular Israeli group. But talk a little bit about the influence that Shaike had on you.
Well, I did not see mime before seeing Shaike. I did not hear about it. I just by chance, someone from the theater told me I have 2 tickets to go to see the show. And I went with him. And I couldn't, after the show, I went home and I couldn't sleep the whole night. I went in front of the mirror and tried to emulate Shaike. And I knew in my heart that this was something I really wanted to do. And I had a friend in a rival theater. It was called the Orot Theater. He was an actor also. He was a bit older than me, and he took me under his wing a little bit. And I talked to him about Shaike. I told him that he blew my mind, and I was just at a loss, not knowing what to do and about it, how to proceed to become what Shaike is. And he was in France before. He's Moroccan, who was in France and then came to Israel. And he promised me that after my military service, he will go to Paris, will find for us a place. And once I complete the military service, I'll go and join him there. And we'll study with the teacher of Shaike Ophir, the man who created modern mime, Mr. Etienne de Croo. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, we'll move on in a minute, but for those who I can highly recommend, for those who want to see Shaike in his later years, in probably the most moving performance I ever saw. You can find a movie, I think it's available, Hashoter Azulai, the policeman Azulai, and watch what this man was able to accomplish on screen, especially the last scene, Moni, I'm sure you remember, when he has to retire and there is a parade in his honor, the other officers, and he's just standing there. There's a close-up of Shaike saluting. He doesn't move his face, and the tears just come straight. It is one of the most amazing, and this is something I always learned from my father, especially on stage, that non-movement is sometimes stronger than moving on stage. A stillness creates so much power in stillness. And that was his great. So you came to Paris. What year was it?
1958.
Okay, alone, or had you already met Mina?
No. I met Mina in Paris while studying with the crew and Marceau. I met her at the Marceau school. But yeah.
And we'll skip just a little bit, because while in Paris, I started talking about it. You met a lady who changed your life. I believe she came to see you perform, and she wanted to meet you.
When I was in Paris, besides doing little gigs of mine here and there, while I was studying with the crew and Marceau and French classics with Georges Wilson at the TNP, I also joined a little theater at the time that toured Germany and France. It was called Théâtre Franco-Allemand. And I played, if I can remember well, I played Le Tambour Majeur in Wojciech by Büchner. And a member of the company was American, and she invited Stella Adler to come and see the show. And Stella came and saw it. And after the show, she asked Simone, who was this actress, who is this young man who played Le Tambour Majeur? And Simone told her he's an Israeli who lives here and studies mime, and said, I would like very much to talk to him. So the next morning, I went to Georges V, the hotel where Stella Adler stayed. And of course, I couldn't open my mouth because she was the most stunning vision that one can imagine. Anyway, to make it short, she said, you come to America and I'm going to help you to become an important actor. But before that, you have to study in my school. And I said, I have no money and I don't know, I cannot get an affidavit and so on. So she called from the terrace, someone who was typing in the terrace. He was a young poet with whom she lived at the time. And she told him, well, I'd like Moni to come to the United States and study with me. Could you arrange it? So he said, wait just a moment. He went, put on a suit, took me in his hand to cross the street to the American embassy. And half hour later, I had the visa.
Did you ever think of the fact that Stella may have had a secondary motive to meet you, another ulterior motive? Because Stella was also known to be attracted to handsome young men.
It's possible. However, I don't think she would go to that extent, bringing me to her school, having me teach in her school without at all knowing what teaching means at the time. I didn't know what, never taught before. So even if she did have that, it was never apparent because I was already with Mina when I arrived to the States, and she adored Mina. So Mina and I really became very, very close with Stella. Actually, all the Jewish holidays we spent at her house. And I don't know if you remember Tzvi Kolitz.
Of course. Actually,
So I met Tzvi at her place and we became great friends. And we used to have parties together all the time. So it was a most rewarding relationship, I would say.
I visited Stella's apartment because Tzvi Kolis was one of the producers when we did the Megillah, the first
Right.
Israeli musical on Broadway in 1969. Tzvi was one of the producers. And Stella and my father worked together. When my father came to the United States, Stella was a star in the Yiddish theater. She started with her family, her father, Jacob P. Adler, the great Jacob Adler. And in 1964, I was lucky enough to study with her in Los Angeles very briefly because I asked my father, can you call Stella and maybe I can, get into one of her classes?
Yeah.
He called her and she made an exception. I didn't have to audition. And I remember she was the most gorgeous, grandiose figure, when she walked in with she used to walk in with a little white dog, and there was a pin spot. She sat in this beautiful armchair, and you just, you had to sit there and in awe of this presence. She was a presence.
Absolutely. She was a queen. She was a queen.
I'm not sure I learned very much, but I was in awe.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot from her because I stayed close to her for many years. And there was nothing in theater like her script analysis. It was the most amazing, mind-boggling thing. It was just, she never stayed on one thing, focused on one thing. It was the entire, she dealt with the culture, with the social structure, with the political state of the country. She was so amazing. It was like sitting there and hearing the most incredible, insightful lecture that you could hear. And by the way, she had two white little dogs. One of them was called Principe, and the other one was called Marlon, because it was Marlon Brando gave the dogs to Stella as a gift.
So from Stella, you eventually became one of the founders of Juilliard's drama department. How did that come about?
Well, you know that I think you know it, that I had my mime company almost 6 months after my arrival to New York. And that was my dream. Mina and I happened to perform at St. Mark's Place, and we got fantastic reviews, and people started to come, and young people came and asked whether I could teach them. And I said, if you gather a few people, I might try and do it. And that's how it started. Actually, they brought about 8 people at the beginning. And that's how we started our first school. And about a year later, we started our company with the students in the school. The school really prospered at the time. And that's how we started our first mime company. So I was totally in, I don't know if you know that, but I always had clashes with Stella as far as mime was concerned, because she hated mime. She didn't want me to continue. She wanted me to focus on acting. And I was in love with mime. I didn't want to leave it. I didn't want to let it go. She explained to me why, because she said that mime is the art of showing, and while acting is the art of being and doing. And to a certain extent, she was right, to a certain extent. And along the years, I tried to combine both, whatever I studied with Stella and whatever I studied with Mr. De Croo. I just merged them together and did a mime that I think that was very, very different and special than anyone else that was doing mime at the time. And it so happens, I think, I had a friend whose name was Millard Lampel. Millard Lampel was a playwright and screenwriter whose daughter was in my mime school. And one day he told me the story, how I got into Juilliard. He was a friend of John Houseman. And at the time they asked John Houseman to start and create this, the drama division at Juilliard, Lincoln Center that just opened. And he said he could not do, artistically, he could not really do it. So they got Michel Saint-Denis from London, who at the time was with the Old Vic. He actually was one of the great directors of Old Vic, and he created the School of Old Vic. And so they both joined to create the drama division. And one day Millard told me the story that he went to John's office for whatever reason. He was a friend of his as well. And he saw a newspaper on John's desk with a review about me. And it was a very positive review. And he asked John, "What's this doing on your desk?" And he said, "Well, we are starting the drama division at Juilliard and we are looking for teachers." So Millard told him, "Take this man, he is the right man for you." Because in the review, it was written that I created some kind of a new type of movement, etc., etc. And that's how it happened. John called me and we went to a place in Connecticut with some other prospective teachers. And we sat with John, Michel Saint-Denis, 10 young people. Everybody sat around and each one of us gave a class. And after the class, everybody expressed his opinion or her opinion. And that was the beginning of it.
Can you believe, Moni, that it's been 52 years, over half a century, that you have had such a influence on so many artists, I mean, both famous and non-famous. Do you keep in touch with all your students? I mean, you must have had over the 52 years, countless students that have gone on to great careers. Do they stay in touch with you? You stay in touch with them?
Not with all of them, of course, but with quite a number of them, yes. And with some of them, I'm actually very close friends, especially from the groups that started, first, second, third, fourth group. I'm very close friends with some of them. And you asked me whether I can believe that I was there for over half a century. No, I couldn't believe it. At the beginning, for me, it was a joke. I was only interested in my company. And the reason I joined the Juilliard School was specifically to find talent for my own company. And it so happened that things just rolled, you know, and I had a few people. I don't know if you remember Tony Azito, who was a great, great actor mover and who came to join my company. He was at Juilliard and some others. But that was my intention at the beginning. It so happened that I had my company for 3 different companies over the years for 26 years. And it so happened that because of financial reasons and so on, I had to fold my last company, and I stayed at Juilliard. And this became my focus. And I felt that everything I've learned in my life, don't forget that I was also a director at the time, and in a show that you wanted to join, actually, if you recall that.
Jacques Brel.
That's correct.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So I did all of these things, but my focus was my mime company. I was given a lot of plays at the time to direct, and I was not interested in. I did here and there a few things, yes, when I found the time to do it. But my focus was my mime company. And once it closed, once it folded, I just naturally, all my energies and ability and experience channeled into directing and teaching.
Did you develop your teaching method right from the start, and has it continued through the years, or did it, did it develop as you went along? Has it changed from the beginning
Well,
to now?
I had no technique of my own at the beginning. And I told it to Stella. And she said, you know what? Do the exercises you've done with Mr. De Croo, only remember that you are working with actors and not with mimes. I didn't know what that meant. And that's how I started. Along the years, working with Stella Adler so tightly for quite a few years, I understood what she meant. So, as mimes, we work with tensions. If you are not tense in one part of the body, another part of even the air itself, it's something against which you struggle. However, in acting, you can't do that. When you want to drink, there is a glass of water there. You take it and you drink. In mime, you don't have it, so you create this tension in the hand. You bring it here, you do that, and this, and that, and put it back. In acting, you have it. So you have to be totally loose when you act. I found a way to combine the technique that I learned with Mr. De Croo with the kind of relaxation that was needed for acting. And as I was doing that, I started to develop different exercises or expand upon the exercises that I knew at the time. And that's how the technique evolved. I did not sit and think about it. It just evolved through practice.
Moni, we are meeting at a very important time in all our lives, but ironically, this is an important time in your life, you and Mina, because I caught you a few days before you are making a very important decision in light of the reality of this pandemic and the situation in New York and in the teaching profession. This in a couple of days, you and Mina are flying to Israel,
Correct.
and it's something that I guess there's not an Israeli living overseas that doesn't ultimately say, I want to go back home. And you always put it off and put it off. But I guess this is an opportunity, a chance for you to do something you've always wanted to do, right?
I always dreamt of it. I always wanted to do that. Just, life takes you in directions that you don't always control. And at this time, with the pandemic, with the COVID, with me not liking to teach through Zoom, I decided, I have a group of people that I'm coaching, besides Juilliard, among them, actors that work. So I think I can still coach well. When someone works on a part, I can coach through Zoom. I just didn't want to teach 18 people at the same time through Zoom. I didn't feel that I was doing the best that I could do. But coaching one-on-one is something that I will continue to do.
So you and Mina are going to be in Tel Aviv.
Correct.
I guess the first thing you'll have to do is quarantine for 2 weeks.
I didn't know that until yesterday, by the way.
Yeah.
Only yesterday I was told that I have to do that.
Right. You have to quarantine when you arrive for 2 weeks. The situation in Israel started out, modestly, but it's gotten worse in the last few weeks. But they're getting it under control. And I hope pretty soon as possible, to come and visit you so we can, meet and hug you rather than doing this, on the screen. But I wish you, mazal, brachot.
Thank you so very much. And I'd like to say I'm not going like blindly. I'm totally aware of the situation because the coronavirus is bad. Politically, it's even worse. But it's a decision that I think I'm full with and I'm happy with. And in spite of all the difficulty of getting again to try and integrate myself in the Israeli society, I know how difficult it's going to be for me, but I see it as a new challenge.
No, Moni, look, I know that every year you used to go in summer.
Right.
Summers you would go back and
every summer that I went, I was very happy that I knew I was going back to America.
Well, look, it's just a plane ride away, but eventually look, I was born in America and I came to Israel as a little kid.
I thought you were born in Argentina.
Many people do. No, I was born in New York. But when I came to Israel, when I'm in Israel, I feel completely like an Israeli. You were born there, so it's not something that you need to reacclimate yourself. I mean, it takes 10 minutes and you're back with...
I tell you, to certain things, I have to reacclimate myself. And I've been talking to myself about it, trying psychologically to veer my brain in such a way not to get mad when I go to an office, because it's totally different here, everybody is here to serve you when you go to certain places, and there you serve actually them. So it is difficult in some ways. However, I know it, and I'll try to do my best to try and cope with it.
Yes, but on the other hand, there is something very unique about friendship in Israel.
Absolutely.
Friends are friends. You don't have to make an appointment to go and visit a friend. It's hard to explain, but the chaverut, the friendship in Israel, is so much more special.
Very special.
Well, listen, I wish you, Nesiya Tova. You should, in Yiddish, we say Vorgesund, Kimgesund. I want to ask you something I always ask my friends on these chats. If I were to ask you for one individual that inspired your life, can you tell me who it would be?
I had a few individuals that inspired my life.
But it's somebody very special that you can say, that gave me the inspiration.
Well, my older brother, without a doubt, my elder brother.
And he's still with us?
He passed 2 months ago.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a great artist himself. He painted, he was a great painter. And definitely he inspired my life, and he was the motivation for everything I did.
And what about your career? I think I know who you're going to say.
As I said, Mr. The Crew,
Yeah.
Stella Adler, and Marcel Marceau in certain way, because Marcel Marceau taught me how to earn my living through entertaining people.
Which is nothing to sneeze at.
Not at all. Not at all.
Moni, I love you.
I love it.
I wish you all the best. And let's hope we see each other in Israel.
I surely hope so.
Mina wouldn't want to show her face, would she?
She is coming.
Oh,
She
good.
will show you.
Yeah,
She's right.
I want to see my Mina. And
There is
there she is.
our Mina.
Oh, hi, sweetheart. Hi, Mina.
Hi. Hi. I don't have makeup on, so you know.
No, neither does Moni, and I don't either. So, you know,
I put my.
I always tell.
I wore my lipstick today, especially for that. So.
No, I tell Siona, my wife, as well. I don't need makeup for women. My, you know, your beauty shines. Makeup always, for me, it covers up the natural beauty. You don't need it. Nale and Moni, I love you guys. Please stay safe. Enjoy the trip. Enjoy the quarantine. Make sure that somebody brings you food, because you won't be able to go out shopping. And and we'll stay in touch.
That would be great. We'd love to see you.
And I leave you with my motto, which I always leave people with: Carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
Seize the day.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Shalom,
Take
my
care.
friends. Shalom.
Shalom.